You are about to listen to another episode of That Sports Guys podcast, hosted by Craig Forrestall. Find Craig on Twitter at that_sports_guy. The That Sports Guys podcast is proudly featured by NFL Draft Diamonds, your draft coverage king. So sit back, relax, and enjoy some football talk.
Hello and welcome to another episode of That Sports Guys podcast. I am Craig Forrestall. You may know me from Twitter as at that_sports_guy. And today I have with me Villanova quarterback Daniel Smith. Daniel, what's going on?
Hey, how you doing, Craig?
I'm doing pretty good. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. And I want to ask you about where it is that you grew up, because I am not familiar with Lynchburg, Virginia. What is life like in Lynchburg? What was it like growing up there?
It's probably a lot different than a lot of my teammates, honestly. It's a suburban, little county city right outside D.C., about an hour away. Growing up, I always had a lot of friends whose parents had a lot of money. It was one of those communities that from the time I was little to now, it just grew and grew and grew exponentially. And it was a great place to grow up. I had a lot of good friends back home. I still do. Growing up, we'd be outside playing either at the elementary school in the field or on the playground, or playing basketball, throwing the football around, just always trying to stay active and, just be outside and have fun being kids.
And now I want to fast forward to when you're coming out of high school in Leesburg. You originally went to Campbell University, but I just wanted you to maybe take me through the recruiting process for you at that time, and just maybe some of the other schools that were coming after you besides Campbell.
Yeah, I was pretty heavily recruited by a couple of Ivy League schools. A couple of CAA schools recruited me for a good amount of my high school career. But it was mostly a lot of D2s and D3s that were on my radar at that point. And then after my senior year had ended, Coach Lindsay, who was the linebackers coach at Campbell at the time, he's now back at NC State where he went to school, coaching over there. But he came in to my high school and sat down with me, and we talked for a little bit. Fast forward a little bit from there is I take an official visit. I get into Coach Minter's office. He offers me, at the time, wasn't a scholarship, but it was basically saying, hey, we want you to come play football for us, because they didn't have athletic scholarships at that point in time. And I decided that, Division I football is what was my dream. And, Campbell University gives me that. And on my visit, I really connected with the guys and the coaching staff, and it felt like a really good place for me to be.
And I want to stick there with your time at Campbell University, Daniel. While you were there, you rewrote several records, and you established new marks in career total yards for offense, rushing touchdowns, passing yards, and a handful of others. And during your 2 years there as a starter, the program transitioned from the Pioneer League, like you said, which is non-scholarship, to the Big South. What was the biggest difference between the conferences, if any, during that transition phase?
I think the two biggest things were the talent level, because obviously when you go from having guys who, there's some guys who, athletically might be good enough to play at that level, but they can't afford school, so an athletic scholarship helps a lot. And in the PFL, it wasn't as much of that. I mean, you still had guys who could play, obviously, because it's still Division I football, but I just think all around the total talent level was a little bit higher in the Big South, and the physicality of the Big South was one of the first things I noticed, especially when we got into our conference schedule. They were just a little bit bigger, a little bit faster, a little bit stronger, and, they hit a little bit harder. So it was a little bit of an adjustment to make after, felt like just running around a lot in the PFL and then going to the Big South and having to, be a more complete quarterback.
Daniel, while you were at Campbell, you had the experience to play for a former NFL player in Mike Minter. What was it like playing for Mike Minter, playing for someone who had been at the highest level?
Oh, Coach Minter, he was great. as far as like with the players, he had like an open door policy. If you had any questions for him, if you needed to talk to him anything, his door was always open for you. So I found myself in there numerous times, talking to him about faith, about life, about football. And he's just a good guy that you can learn a lot from, and it was good to have that experience under him and to learn from him.
You graduated from Campbell and then went into the transfer portal with a couple years of eligibility remaining. And were you dead set on attending Villanova, or did you take your time to make that decision?
So when I decided to enter the transfer portal, I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know what the next couple months were going to look like. And when the process first started, I reached out to some of the MAC schools, because this was already May, so most of the rosters at the FBS level are set, and at the FCS level are set. So it was kind of like jumping into uncharted territory with no idea if there's going to be any food or not. And I got there. I got a couple calls from some D2 schools, from a couple FCS schools, and then Villanova. I got in contact with Coach Adams, the defensive coordinator, because my high school coach had actually told me that he had heard that they were looking for a quarterback. So I followed him on Twitter. He followed me back, and he reached out to me, and we got the whole conversation going. And as soon as Villanova popped up on my radar, that was a school I wanted to go to. That was my number one. So as soon as they offered me, I took it immediately.
And last season with Villanova, you adjusted to the offense very quickly, very smoothly. You threw for 35 touchdowns, ran for 12 more, and you added a receiving score just for good measure. How were you able to transition so quickly to the Villanova offense?
Well, it certainly helps that Coach Bowden was in his first year as the offensive coordinator, and everyone was kind of learning at the same rate. A lot of the guys had a head start on me because they had spring ball, but the quarterbacks, when I got there in the summer, were open arms, took me in, had me in the quarterback room. We were going over formations, we were going over plays, watching film. And honestly, if it hadn't been for them, I don't think the adjustment would have been as smooth. And, it was just a perfect situation to come into, because everyone was so great. The coaching staff was great. All the players took me in like I was family, and it ended up in a great situation.
All right, Daniel, I heard you chuckle when I mentioned the receiving touchdown. So let's just go for it, all right? So for people that have not seen the play, essentially it was a jet sweep that turned into a quarterback screen with a throwback to you. Am I describing that pretty accurately?
Yeah, that's pretty much on point.
And so now you took it to the house, 68 yards, and you had to make a dive into the end zone at the end there. When the play was called, what went through your mind, and how often did you practice that?
So that was against Stony Brook, and we had our bye week the week before Stony Brook. So we had put that in right after the JMU game, when we had 2 weeks until Stony Brook, and we put in like 3 or 4 trick plays that we had just been practicing. I think we ran all of them in that game, but we practiced it for 2 weeks. Every practice, we were running it. After the first time we ran it, our defense knew it was coming whenever they saw it, and like it didn't work at all in practice, like ever. I think it worked the first time, but after that, it did not work at all. So we get in the game, and he calls it, and I'm like, "Are you sure about this? Like, it hasn't worked once in practice." He looks at me, he's like, "I'm sure about it. Like it's gonna work." I'm like, "All right, if you say so." Like, everything you said's worked so far. So we get in, and I hand the ball off to him, and he's telling me he goes, act nonchalant, like act like you're just watching the play, and then just slowly start to backpedal and let your lineman get out in front of you. So Jaron, I hand the ball off to him, and I just kind of watch him, and he turns back, and he turns to throw the ball to me, and I just see it go up in the air, and I'm just hoping no one's coming to hit me as the ball's in the air. And I catch it, and I turn, and I look upfield, and I have 3 or 4 linemen out in front of me with a clear path from the sideline, and my bodyguards leading the way, Secret Service leading the way. So I just ran as fast as I could till I could get to the end zone. And, I told our coach that I was getting in the end zone one way or another, because I did not want to have to run another play after that.
And Daniel, let's go ahead and let's talk about the CAA. You mentioned the Colonial Athletic Association a little bit earlier when we were talking, and I just want to ask about the talent in that conference, in the CAA, because that is regarded as the top, if not one of the best two conferences in all of FCS football. What is it like going through a grueling in-season CAA schedule?
Not to sound extreme, but it's a little bit like war, you know. We have our wounded warriors on the side of practice every week, you know, and not fully dressed out because, you know, every week is just a battle. It's so physical. I mean, there's so much talent. The game's so fast. It's just a different level. When you talk about FCS, and how I like to compare it, I see it as almost like a group of five conference. I think that we could go up to that level and compete. I'm not saying we'd go beat everybody, but I think we could certainly compete at that level.
Speaking of being able to compete at that level, I think you would definitely be able to. And I'll go through some of the preseason accolades that you were named with this year. You were a preseason All-American and the preseason CAA Offensive Player of the Year. And then came the unfortunate news and the difficult news that I'm sure you had to process, that there was not going to be football this fall. So what are you doing to mentally and physically stay prepared for when football does come back around?
Yeah, so when we got the news that the season wasn't going to be happening for us, it was tough, you know, especially going into my fifth year. There's a lot of uncertainty as to what was the next few months would hold. Was I going to have to get a job and try to get up to school and try to work out with the team and try to take a couple classes, or what was the plan next? But fortunately, they brought me back on for the fall semester and for the spring. I'm just taking classes right now. We should be starting workouts back up here pretty soon. And I'm just going to be working as closely as I can with Coach Bowden and just trying to fine tune my game in a way that, you know, I can run our offense to the best of my ability.
Daniel, this is going to be the last football-based question that I have for you, and it sort of deals with you being under-recruited and doubted throughout your career, but you've always proven that you belong based on your play. Do you embrace the doubt and use it as fuel, or when you step on the field, is it a mission for you to ball out every time and show that you are not an underdog?
I think whenever you see doubt, it's almost human nature to, you know, feel that kind of bitterness and that chip on your shoulder, like you want to prove them wrong. So yeah, I mean, whenever I feel like somebody doubts me, I feel like I need to prove them wrong. But I think it's more so just me trying to prove that, you know, I belong out there with everybody else, and that the stage is never too big for me. That's the one thing that I want to go out and prove every single day, whether it's practice, whether it's lift, whether it's meetings, whether it's a game. I just want to prove that, you know, I belong out there and that I can do it well.
So, Daniel, you ready to go ahead and jump over to the non-football questions?
Let's get after it.
All right, let's do it. So, which celebrity do you want to sit next to on a cross-country flight?
I would love to sit next to Mr. John Wick himself, Keanu Reeves. He's just probably one of my favorite actors. But otherwise, you know, he's one of those people that I feel like you always hear about in the news who's trying to do good. And I think that's a good person that you could, you know, learn stuff from and, you know, ask questions, pick their brain.
What's the most adventurous thing you've ever done?
There's I don't know, a trail. It's called Old Rag. It's this mountain range in Virginia, in kind of central Virginia. And me, a couple of my buddies actually went up there when we were in high school. And basically you walk this trail for 2 or 3 miles, I want to say. And then you come up and it's called the rock scramble. And basically you have to climb up, basically do some mini rock climbing to get on top of this mountain. And when you get up there, I mean, you can see for miles and miles and miles. So, I mean, it's definitely worth it. But then the hike back down kind of sucks because it's another 2 or 3 miles and you're just going back to the car. You just want to be there already.
What's the best advice you ever received?
My mom gave me a really good piece of advice when I was in high school. we were just talking about jealousy and, just kind of emotions and how they work. And she told me that jealousy is a trait that, I see it as pointless. She pretty much told me, like, if somebody's going to do something, they're going to do something, and you'd rather them, just go do it and not try to hide it, and, just be forthright. And I feel like there's no jealousy if there's forthright, if you're forthright with people. Like they can't get jealous for you doing something that you said you were going to do.
What was your least favorite chore or household duty growing up?
See, I got lucky. I had older siblings for a lot of my childhood, so I'm sure they got the brunt of it. I don't know. I hated cleaning my room.
Anything in particular, like making the bed, organizing the clothes? Laundry. I would wait until I ran out of clothes to do laundry just because I didn't like doing it that much. Like I would go back to my pile and just see if there was a clean clothing item that I threw in there on accident or something. So you were that kid that was showing up to high school in a polo shirt with basketball shorts because that's all you had clean because you refused to do your laundry?
Not even a polo shirt. It was just t-shirt and shorts every day.
You weren't mismatched like that, huh? You weren't roughing it too bad. So
I mean, it was a little mismatched by color, but it wasn't too bad.
All right. Now, Daniel, here's the final question that we got for you. Where can I find the best Philly cheesesteak close to the Villanova campus?
So I am not the best person to ask that question. I've only been to Pat's and Gino's because on my visit, everyone said you have to try it. It's the tourist spot, basically. Mm-hmm. Like if you're in Philly, you have to try it. But I have a buddy at Temple, and he's told me the same as some of my teammates here and some of my friends here that either go to Jim's or De La Sandro's, which is not really in the city; it's just outside the city. But I've heard they make the best cheesesteaks hands down. I've heard both, so I can't say one or the other's better. But I want to say De La Sandro's has a slight edge from numbers, from what I've heard.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. That is Daniel Smith, Villanova quarterback, taking the time to get to know him a little bit today. Daniel, any final words before I let you go?
And I just want to thank you for having me on. It was a pleasure to do this today.
Likewise, ladies and gentlemen, for Daniel Smith, I'm Craig Forrestall. Until next time, stay safe and be easy.
Hey everybody, Craig Forrestall. Thanks for tuning in and listening to another episode of That Sports Guys podcast. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at @that_sports_guy to catch all the latest updates and podcast episodes. Until next time, stay safe and be easy.